Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. I want to say a big hello to all the new subscribers, and I want to thank you for subscribing. We're going to go over a little outboard here, and you may remember it, so come along with me and let's get inside this outboard. Let's go inside outboards with your host, Cody Bass. Let's go. You know what this hat means. It means Christmas in October. Let's look at it. Somebody came bearing gifts. There she is, a little 9 1/2 Johnson. The motor's actually very clean but seized. So I pulled the head off with its head, and the cylinders look good. So I think it's just weather seized. So I'm gonna put some lubricating potion in those two cylinders and let it soak for a day or two and see if I can't get a breaker bar on it and free it up. A little bitty Johnson 9 1/2. I think it's a 1974, which I think was the year they started this run on this motor. Or maybe that was when they ended it, actually. I can't remember. But anyway, nice clean little motor. Don't look real salty at all, but it is at least weather seized, and the tiller handle, snap, it's broken. Now, if you look, I put a mark right there. And I lined it up with the corner of this carburetor intake. I put another one right over here. And I lined it up with the top of the recoil starter. Then you see these bolts I screwed. They're just 1 inch, quarter 20 bolts. And I screwed them right down in these holes. You can see these holes here. They're threaded. Okay? Because if you're torquing, trying to use a breaker bar on the nut or whatnot, you're not getting much torque because this is the center of the crankshaft. You want to be out here. It's just like why this starter's out here. All right, because this is where you're going to get your most torque, is on that outer edge. So then I took a tool, something along like this, and I used the fat end. And I screwed these bolts down to where there's not much sticking out. Then what I could do is come along here with my hammer, bang, bang, and I kept going back and forth, bang, bang, bang. And then finally you'll start to see your marks moving. Bam, 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 bam. And you'll see them marks moving like that. And then you know you're getting somewhere. And so that's what I did to get this thing freed up. And then, once I got those freed up, then I took my 1/2 inch Milwaukee drill, put it on there, and just spin it over for 2 or 3 minutes. All right, so I spin it over and get everything freed up. So, now what we're going to do is a compression test and a spark test. So, she is freed up now. She spins over really nice and easy. So I need to take these back out and get set up for a compression and spark check. Let me get set up and I'll be right back. Okay, watch right here on my spark check. So we got good hot spark on both. Let's get a compression checker on there. And that's a big gap for that to jump for a points. The gap on that particular checker is pretty big. So even though it looked like the one cylinder might not have been jumping good. On a little spark plug gap, that'll jump fine. All right, so hopefully you can see that. She's at 0. See what we get on the bottom cylinder. With the old Milwaukee. We got 65, 70. So we got 70 on the bottom. Now that sounds pretty low. But actually, for these old 9 1/2s, they are not real high compression engine. 80 I found kind of seems like average on these guys. I don't think I've ever had one probably above 85. So let's see what we get. Okay. 65, 70. So we got 70 bottom and top. Now keep in mind this thing was seized. So there may be issues, but I took the head off of it, and the cylinders look pretty good in there. It has J6J plugs in there. Alright. J6Js, and I do believe that is what's supposed to go in there. So she's unseized. I did not hone the cylinders or anything. I just unseized it with the potion. And then I used the little bolts to get the flywheel moving. So we got some sparky, we got some compression. Let me get her set up. I'll be right back. Alright, so at this point I hooked some fuel up. This throttle handle tiller still needs to be replaced, but I can actuate the throttle from back here. Once the choke is in, I think I can. Go. Let me make sure I can. I'm not sure. Yeah, there we go. Got the fuel hooked up. Let's see. Kill switch don't work on it either. Woohoo! Smoky. Smoky baby. You're smoky on me, baby. Alright. Get you back over. And get you up a little. Alright, that'll do. Okay. So, we took her from a Christmas in October freebie gift, seized, unseized, and run. Still needs a lot of work. Typically, I don't mess with these 9 1/2s. And the reason why is they don't sell well, and I don't feel real good about selling them. And the reason for that is they are very hard to work on. They have a rubber boot in the lower, in between the lower and the upper halves of the engine. The upper half, unlike most outboards put out by OMC and so forth of the era, this thing is a 2-piece clamshell design. These engines have power head stabilization problems. That rubber boot is in the leg up under the 2 halves of the clam so that it doesn't breathe its own gases, which they're notorious for. And I'll point out a couple things. What I want the person who's, if you're mechanically knowledgeable about outboards and everything, these are fine little motors. There's things you can do to overcome their shortcomings and shortfalls. But if you're a person who's not mechanically inclined and don't know a whole lot about 2-stroke older outboards, avoid this motor. Even if it looks clean and pretty. I'll bring it back out of the tank and I'm going to show you some of the things that it looks to me like, and from what I've read, OMC was in a hurry to get out something under 10 horsepower because some of the lakes across the country or whatever were putting 10 horsepower maximum, or less than 10 horsepower maximum horsepowers on their lakes and everything, hence the 9.9. Well, Mercury was ahead of the curve on that, and they were ready to debut their 9.8, and OMC said we got to hurry and get something, so they took some existing 12 horsepower, 14, 15 horsepowers. I don't know the exact horsepower, but I think the leg on this is off an old 14 horsepower. But anyway, they just cobbled this thing together, it looks like. You won't even find another outboard where they took the power head, lifted it up, spun it, and then set it back down. And that's what they did with this, and that's why it has the breathing issues. Let me get this out of the tank and I'll show you some of the things. So if you're new to outboards and you come across one of these, somebody's selling it cheap, I would advise you to pass on it. Yeah, especially if you don't have mechanical skills. Alrighty, so let me just down a little bit. So there's where I'm talking. You see this here? I can stick my hands up in there, my fingers up in there. And what these things do, especially if they're in the well of a boat that has a well on it, that rubber boot is right in here on this motor, and due to age, heat, and so forth, over time the boot curls in on itself, and it will let those gases, exhaust gases, get up through here. Now you put the cover on top of this outboard, and it becomes notorious for breathing its own gases. So in most outboard motors, when you lift off the bonnet, the carburetor is going to be right here. Well, on this motor, they put the block in there this way. So the carburetor is clean around back here, all the way around to the back. And so once you put the hood on this and fumes start coming up through that where the rubber boot tries to block them out, the thing can't breathe. And even with the rubber boot being probably in good shape, it's not going to breathe well with the carburetor being all the way back here. So then the shifter is a hodgepodge things of linkage and stuff. The choke, you can see how long the choke rod is. It's just and then this whole tiller setup and everything is very complex on how it works. So for the person who's buying their first outboard and whatnot, this is not one you want to buy, in my opinion. They're hard to maintain, they're quite complex, and even the basics such as carburetor kits for this motor. I mean, if you look at that carburetor, it's quite different than most everything you'll find on an Evinrude Johnson. So the carburetor kits are getting hard to find, and so forth. I started this one earlier than the start I just did on it a minute ago. And when I started it, I was hearing a screeching noise, some kind of whining, screeching, and then the flywheel would kind of tighten up. So I wasn't sure what was going on. So, but I knew something wasn't right. So I said, you know, there's something that ain't right. There's something just ain't right. So what I did was I popped the flywheel on it. And lo and behold, I found a surprise. And what I found was a headless nail. It's definitely a nail. It's got a nail point, and the head's missing off the nail. But that was in there rubbing up against the bottom of the flywheel. Squeak, 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 squeak. And then it would catch, and the flywheel would kind of bind. I'd back it up, and it would let loose. So, keep the nails out your outboard, peoples. You understand? Then I also found this bolt, laying down in the cow in the lower crack there. And I don't know where that goes. I got to find out where that goes. It was in there, so it must go in there somewhere. I don't see no water leaking out, no gas leaking out. The motor seems to run halfway decent. So, the 9 1/2 is unseized. Still needs a lot. Whether I'll even mess with it too much, cosmetically I probably won't do anything to it. What I'll probably do is repair the tiller throttle linkage setup. Unfreeze, the transom clamps are froze, but that's no big deal, we can get that done. And then I'll probably give it to one of my buddies or something for a codfish. You understand? Maybe a dungy crab. I likes me some dungy crab. But anyway, that's going to be a wrap on this one, and thanks for watching.
More vids to come on Inside Outboard for sure.